trailed across the desolate stretch of country road as Emma Clark tightened her grip on the steering wheel. It was supposed to be an ordinary assignment photographing the ruins of an old mental hospital for a historical journal. Yet the closer she got, the heavier the sky became, and the deeper the fog pressed against her windshield. Her phone's GPS had lost its signal miles back. Only the cracked map on her passenger seat guided her now. According to the faded directions, the Blackwood Asylum lay beyond a rusted iron gate at the end of the road. The facility had been abandoned since 1974 after a fire claimed dozens of lives. The government sealed it off, but rumors persisted, whispers of unrecorded experiments on patients, the ghosts of nurses still patrolling the hallways, screams echoing in the night. Emma parked near the gate and stepped out, camera bag slung over her shoulder. The smell of damp earth and decaying leaves filled her nostrils. The wrought iron gate was twisted and broken, as if something had forced its way out rather than in. She clicked her flashlight on. The beam caught carved letters on one of the gateposts. "We never left." A shiver skated down her spine. Probably vandals, she told herself. Urban explorers left all sorts of messages in places like this, but the words looked old, weather-worn, not fresh paint. Inside the grounds, the asylum loomed like a sleeping giant 3 stories of crumbling brick and shattered windows. Ivy crawled up its face, clinging like dark veins. The main entrance yawned open, door hanging by one hinge. Emma lifted her camera and began shooting. The shutter's click sounded unnaturally loud in the still air. Each photograph revealed details she hadn't noticed, faint smears on the walls, broken wheelchairs, restraints dangling from beds, left to rot in the courtyard. "Creepy," she whispered. From somewhere deep inside the asylum came the faint echo of footsteps. She froze. The sound stopped. The fog thickened, swirling at her ankles. "Probably another photographer," she murmured. Her voice trembled. Or an animal. But something about the rhythm of those footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy, made her stomach tighten. She stepped inside the building. The hallway stretched ahead like a throat lined with peeling paint. Old fluorescent lights dangled from wires like broken teeth. The smell of mildew mixed with something metallic rust, or blood, she couldn't tell. She snapped another photo. In the camera's display, for a split second, a shadowed figure stood at the far end of the hall. When she lowered the camera, the hall was empty. Emma's heart thumped. "Just a trick of the light," she said under her breath. She followed the hall, turning into what had once been a common room. Broken furniture lay strewn across the floor. A child's doll sat upright in a chair, one eye missing. Its porcelain face was cracked into a grim smile. She lifted her camera again and took a picture. Behind her, the door slammed shut. She spun, flashlight beams slicing through the dust. The door stood closed, but no one was there. Then a whisper came from the dark. Emma. Her name. Her own name. The flashlight flickered. Panic clawed up her throat. She pushed at the door, but it didn't budge. Something held it shut from the other side. "Who's there?" she demanded, voice shaking. Silence. Then a low chuckle, rasping like dry leaves. She swung her camera toward the sound and snapped a shot. The flash lit the room for an instant, and in that instant she saw them. Rows of pale faces staring from the shadows. Hollow eyes. Open mouths. When the flash faded, the room was empty. Emma stumbled backward, breath coming fast. She had to get out. She raced to a side door and pushed it open into another corridor. This one was lined with patient rooms, doors ajar, dark inside. Handprints, smeared in black, stretched across the walls. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She yanked it out. No signal. But on the screen, words typed themselves as if by unseen fingers. "Don't leave us." She dropped the phone and bolted. Her footsteps echoed down the corridor, but a second set of footsteps echoed too, heavier, closer. She reached a stairwell. The iron steps groaned under her weight as she climbed to the second floor. Behind her, the footsteps grew louder, accompanied by a dragging sound. At the top landing, she ducked into a ward. Beds lay overturned, straps dangled from the ceiling like nooses. On one bed, a file lay open. She picked it up with trembling hands. Patient name, Clark, Emma admitted. October 3rd, 2024. Diagnosis, delusional psychosis status. Under observation, her blood ran cold. What? She whispered. The dragging sound entered the ward. She turned. The thing in the doorway was tall, gaunt, its face hidden beneath a nurse's cap stained dark. Its arms were long, ending in clawed fingers. It tilted its head at her and spoke in a voice like 1,000 whispers. You came back. Emma screamed. Emma stumbled backward until her spine struck the cold metal frame of an overturned bed. The tall, gaunt figure blocked the doorway, its claws scraping against the frame as if tasting the sound. Her flashlight flickered and then died, plunging the room into a grainy twilight of moonlight leaking through cracked windows. She clutched her camera. The only weapon she had was the flash. She pressed the shutter-click flash. The burst of white light seared the dark, revealing the creature fully. A nurse's uniform torn at the seams, pale skin stretched tight over bones, hollow sockets where eyes should be, and a mouth stitched shut with rusted wire. When the flash faded, it was gone. Emma's pulse hammered. She swung around, searching every shadow. The only exit was the doorway it blocked. Trembling, she crept toward it, each step squeaking on the dusty linoleum. The hall outside lay empty. A faint echo of laughter drifted from somewhere above. Get out, get out. She muttered to herself. Find the stairs, leave. She moved back into the corridor. This time the patient doors were all closed. Heavy, padded, sealed. She passed one with a small viewing window and froze. A pair of eyes stared back at her bloodshot, unblinking. She blinked and they were gone. A sudden thud rattled the ceiling overhead. Dust rained down. Something was moving fast on the floor above. She found another stairwell and started climbing to the 3rd floor. Halfway up, she realized she was walking through a sudden chill, her breath clouding in front of her. The temperature had dropped sharply. The walls of the stairwell looked different, now clean, white, with painted signs that looked freshly applied. Ward 6, experimental therapy. She touched the paint. Wet. No, this can't be real, she whispered. At the top landing, a metal door swung inward on its own, creaking. Inside was a corridor lined with large observation windows. Behind the glass on either side, empty treatment rooms sat waiting, lit by a dim blue glow. Surgical chairs. Leather straps. Instruments that didn't belong in any hospital Emma had ever seen. Long needles, cages, restraints shaped for no human body. She raised her camera. Through the viewfinder, the rooms were empty. Shapes sat in the chairs, patients with their heads encased in metal domes, wires piercing their skin, mouths open in silent screams. When she lowered the camera, the rooms were empty again. Her heart thudded against her ribs. It's just the camera, she whispered. It's showing something. At the far end of the corridor stood a door labeled records. She hurried to it and pushed inside. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with file boxes. A single bare bulb swung from the ceiling, casting restless shadows. She scanned the shelves. All the boxes bore dates from decades past except one. A fresh file sat alone on a desk, its paper crisp. Her name stamped across the front. Emma Clark, subject 317B, hands trembling. She opened it. Photographs spilled out, her own photographs, the ones she'd been taking tonight, but from impossible angles. One showed her standing in the asylum courtyard. Another showed her climbing the stairs. Another captured her at this very desk, opening the file. She hadn't taken these yet. Written beneath the photos, the subject returns to complete the experiment. Termination scheduled, 3 o'clock hours. Her watch read 2:42. A noise creaked behind her. She spun. The gaunt nurse stood inside the room, head cocked, claws outstretched. It stepped forward, dragging something behind it, an old gurney with cracked leather straps. Emma backed away. "Stay away from me," she shouted, voice echoing. It hissed through its wired mouth. The bulb overhead flickered violently, plunging the room into stuttering light and dark. Each flash of light brought the nurse closer 1 step, 2, 3, until it loomed over her, claws reaching. Desperate, she swung her camera up and fired the flash directly at its face. The burst of light triggered a high-pitched shriek. The nurse staggered back, smoke rising from its skin. The bulb shattered, plunging everything into blackness. Emma bolted for the door. She tore into the corridor, running blindly. Behind her, claws scraped metal, echoing like knives on steel. She turned a corner and slammed into another door, this one marked exit. It was locked. She pounded on it. "Help! Somebody!" A whisper slid into her ear. "We told you, you can't leave." Hands cold, skeletal wrapped around her ankles from beneath the floor grate. She screamed and kicked free, stumbling backward. The hallway seemed to stretch, the exit receding like a mirage. Doors on either side burst open, spilling pale figures into the hall. Patients with sunken eyes, skin translucent, their mouths opening in silent cries. They reached for her. Emma darted into an open room. It was a small chapel, its stained glass windows cracked and dark. Candles burned on the altar, though no one had lit them in decades. She slammed the door shut and pressed her back against it, gasping. On the altar lay a thick, leather-bound ledger. Its pages fluttered as if moved by wind. Drawn to it, she approached. Words bled up from the blank page, forming sentences. "Confess your sin. Admit you are one of us." "What?" she whispered. "I'm not." The candles flared, casting long shadows that crawled up the walls. In those shadows, she saw herself not as she was, but as a nurse in the asylum's uniform, standing beside a patient strapped to a chair. She held a syringe in her own shadow hand, plunging it into the patient's neck. "No," she cried, "that's not me." The page wrote again, "You returned because you belong here." Emma backed away, shaking her head. "I'm not one of you. I never was. I'm just..." The chapel door splintered as claws punched through. The gaunt nurse's voice rasped, "Confess, or stay forever." Emma grabbed the ledger and hurled it at the door. The candles went out, plunging the chapel into darkness, except for a faint glow from the stained glass. The glow outlined a trapdoor in the floor near the altar. She yanked it open and scrambled down a narrow stone staircase. The air grew damp and cold, smelling of earth and rust. She descended into a tunnel lined with brick, dripping water echoing like distant screams. At the tunnel's end lay a heavy iron door. On its surface were scratched words, "Through this way lies the truth." She pushed it open. Inside was a vast underground chamber filled with rows of hospital beds, each occupied by a motionless figure covered by white sheets. Above them hung machinery of wires and tubes, still humming faintly after decades. She walked among the beds. Each sheeted form had a tag at its foot. She lifted one. Tag, Clark, Emma, status, in treatment. Her hand shook. She lifted the sheet. Underneath lay herself pale, eyes closed, tubes in her veins, a metal dome encasing her head. She stumbled back, horrified. "This isn't real," she whispered. "This isn't real." A voice filled the chamber, not from the nurse, but from the air itself. "The experiment never ended. You only dream of leaving. Return and you will wake." The gaunt nurse stepped out of the shadows, its claws clicking. Now its stitched mouth was open, wires snapping loose. It smiled with Emma's own smile. "You are one of us," it said. "We've been waiting," Emma screamed. Emma's scream echoed off the iron rafters of the underground chamber, swallowed quickly by the low hum of the machines. The figure that wore her smile kept coming, each step deliberate, claws clicking against the concrete like metronomes. She backed toward the far wall, searching for any exit. Her flashlight was long gone. The only light came from the pale glow of the machinery and the occasional flicker of dying bulbs overhead. The bed stretched into the dark like an army of corpses under shrouds. The hum of the machines deepened into a rhythmic pulse, as though the building itself had a heartbeat. "Wake up," the voice in the air repeated, softer now, coaxing. "Wake up, Emma." She clapped her hands over her ears. "I'm not asleep. I'm not part of this place." But as she shouted, memories began to surface, not her own, yet vivid. A white uniform clinging to her skin, a name tag with her handwriting. Patients screaming as she and others injected them with unknown substances. She staggered, clutching her head. No, that wasn't me. The double of herself, the gaunt nurse, stopped a few feet away and tilted its head. In its other hand, it held a small, cracked mirror. It extended it toward her. "Look," it rasped. She didn't want to, but something in its tone forced her to. She peered into the glass. Her reflection wasn't Emma the photographer. It was Emma in a nurse's uniform, kept pristine, eyes hollow. Blood splashed across her apron. She dropped the mirror, which shattered soundlessly on the concrete. "You returned because you never left," the double whispered. "This is your penance." Emma's knees gave out. She slumped against the wall, breathing hard. If I'm guilty, why don't I remember?" The machines answered with a low groan. The rows of bodies under sheets twitched. Fingers curled around the edges of fabric. Dozens of pale faces began to sit up, their eyes opening in unison. They stared at her, mouths parting in a single voiceless moan. The double stepped closer, claws now gentle. "They waited for you to wake them." "No." Emma scrambled to her feet. "I came here to take pictures, that's all. I'm not." She spotted a narrow corridor behind the machinery, partially hidden by pipes. Without thinking, she darted toward it. The patients swung their heads to follow her movement, but didn't rise from their beds. The double hissed and lunged, claws swiping empty air as Emma slipped into the corridor. It was tight, low, lined with rusted pipes dripping condensation. The hum here was louder, vibrating through the soles of her shoes. She crawled on hands and knees until she emerged into a circular chamber lit by a single hanging lamp. In the center stood a massive switchboard covered in gauges and levers. On the wall, in faded paint, words curved above the machinery, "Neural Dream Induction Project Control Hub." She stared at the dials. Many still flickered with green light, as if the system had never been shut down. A large lever sat in the middle, labeled Terminate Program. "Terminate," she whispered. "End the dream." Behind her, the hiss of claws echoed down the pipe. The double was coming. Emma lunged for the lever. It wouldn't budge. Rust had welded it into place. She yanked with all her strength. The lamp above her swung violently as something crashed into the chamber behind her. "Stop," the double rasped. "If you end it, you end yourself." She turned. The double squeezed through the pipe, unfolding its limbs like an insect. Its stitched mouth was open now, revealing black teeth. It reached for her. "Maybe I don't exist," she said, gripping the lever again. "Maybe none of this does." With a scream, she wrenched the lever downward. It snapped free with a screech of metal. Every light in the chamber flared white, then died. The hum ceased. For a moment, there was utter silence. Then a roar of air rushed around her. The walls dissolved into darkness. The floor fell away. Emma tumbled through nothing. She woke on a bed under a blinding light. Her body felt heavy, sluggish. Tubes tugged at her arms. A heart monitor beeped steadily. She turned her head. She was in a hospital room, but clean, modern, not decayed. A doctor in a white coat leaned over her. "She's awake," he said to someone out of view. Emma tried to speak, but her throat was raw. Where am I?" "You're in St. Jude's Hospital," the doctor said calmly. "You were found unconscious near the ruins of Blackwood Asylum 3 days ago. Severe dehydration and shock. A nurse, a normal-looking nurse, entered and adjusted her for. You're safe now." Emma closed her eyes, relief washing through her. It had been a hallucination, a nightmare born of fever. Of course it had. Then she noticed the tag on her wrist. Patient 317B, Clark, Emma. Her pulse spiked. "No," she whispered. The doctor smiled gently, too gently. "Don't worry. You're right where you belong." He held up a clipboard. The form at the top read Neural Dream Induction Study, Phase 4. Emma tried to pull the tubes out, but her arms were strapped to the bed. "Let me go," she screamed. "I'm not part of this." The nurse leaned close, whispering so softly the doctor couldn't hear. Her breath was cold against Emma's ear. "We never left." Emma turned her head. The nurse's face had changed, pale, hollow-eyed, a hint of stitches at the corner of her mouth. She smiled with Emma's own smile. Emma screamed again, but the sound was swallowed by the hiss of the four. Darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. She realized the machine behind her bed was humming again, the same low, rhythmic pulse. And somewhere deep inside, she remembered everything. Emma's scream faded into a rasp as the darkness closed in. For a moment there was nothing. No sound, no light, no body. Then the hum began again, low, steady, like the heartbeat of some buried monster. It grew louder until it was all she could hear. A pinprick of light appeared ahead of her. She floated toward it, powerless. As it widened, shapes formed, white tile walls, a corridor lined with padded doors. The asylum again. She was walking now she hadn't chosen to. Her hands were the white gloves of a nurse. A tray of syringes balanced on her arm. Voices echoed from the rooms on either side, pleading, crying, cursing. She opened a door. Inside, a patient strapped to a chair stared up at her with terror. It was her own face. "No," she whispered. "This isn't me." The vision shattered like glass. She was back in the hospital bed at St. Jude's, 4 humming, straps biting into her wrists. The doctor stood at the foot of the bed, but his outline flickered, phasing between 2 forms, a normal physician and a tall, gaunt silhouette with claws. "You're still in the induction," the doctor said with both mouths at once. "You never left Blackwood, you volunteered. You asked to experience the other side." "I didn't," Emma croaked. "You did," the doctor said. He held up a consent form. Her signature sprawled across the bottom. Emma Clark, Research Assistant, Neural Dream Induction Project. Memory flooded her like icy water. She had been a young researcher in 1974, hired to monitor the project. They'd told her it was therapeutic. They'd told her the patients were volunteers. But she'd seen the reality and tried to blow the whistle. The fire had started during her escape attempt. She had been caught in the blast, or had she? She looked at her hands. They were pale, lined with scars. Not her photographer's hands, these were older, decades older. "I'm dead," she whispered. "Not yet," the doctor and nurse thing said. "You're in between. You built this place with your guilt. The only way out is to finish the work." "What work?" "To wake the others." The straps on her wrists loosened on their own. The 4 hissed one last time and detached. She sat up. The hospital room dissolved, walls melting into the rotting plaster of Blackwood Asylum. She was standing in the underground chamber again, but now the machines were silent and the beds empty except one. On the last bed lay a figure covered by a sheet. She drew it back. It was herself, as she had been when she first entered tonight. Camera bag, jeans, flashlight, eyes closed. Breathing shallow. Her double, the gaunt nurse, stood across from her, claws folded like praying hands. Two of you cannot exist, it rasped. One must choose. Emma stared at the sleeping version of herself. If she woke that Emma, she would have to stay behind. If she stayed, the other Emma would be free. I came here for pictures, she murmured. But I think I came to atone. The double inclined its head. Then to side, she reached out and touched the other Emma's hand. It was warm. At her touch, the sleeping Emma stirred, eyes fluttering open. They were her own eyes, but clear, unshadowed. The other Emma sat up, gasping. What? Where am I? You're free, Emma said. The double's claws closed around her shoulders like ice. And you are home. The other Emma stumbled to her feet, backing away. Who are you? She asked. Emma smiled faintly. The one who stayed. A doorway appeared in the far wall, bright sunlight spilling through. The free Emma ran to it, hesitated, then looked back. Come with me. Emma shook her head. Someone has to keep the doors open. The double turned her toward the rows of empty beds. They will come, it whispered. One by one, until all debts are paid. Emma squared her shoulders. She was no longer trembling. The uniform fit her perfectly now, crisp and white. She nodded. Then let them come. The other Emma stepped into the light. The doorway closed behind her like a blink. Silence fell. Emma stood alone in the chamber. She moved to the control panel. The gauges flickered to life. A new tag printed from a slot, still warm. She picked it up. Clark, Emma, status, warden. A sound rose from the dark tunnel footsteps, hesitant like someone just arriving. Emma lifted her head. Somewhere above, a gate creaked open. Another explorer had entered Blackwood Asylum. Up above, in the real world, a young man in a leather jacket adjusted his camera strap and peered at the crumbling building. Looks creepy, he muttered. Great spot for my channel. As he stepped through the broken gate, a faint voice echoed from deep within. Welcome. Epilogue weeks later. The historical journal Emma had been working for received an anonymous package. Inside was a camera. Its memory card contained dozens of high-resolution photographs of Blackwood Asylum. Every hallway, every room perfectly lit, perfectly framed. In the final photo, a woman in a crisp white nurse's uniform stood in the courtyard, eyes shadowed but smiling. The editor assumed it was a prank and filed the package away. That night, he dreamed of a hallway lined with padded doors. A whisper slid into his ear. We never left. He woke at 3 o'clock a.m. to find damp footprints leading from his bedroom door to his bed.